15 years ago this week, Kings Island made one of its biggest announcements ever, a B&M hypercoaster named Diamondback. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast for the Kings Island fans, by Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Ryan, how you
I'm doing
doing?
well, and to be clear, we care about other things too, but mainly Kings Island, let's be honest with you.
Oh, for this podcast, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get right into it because Diamondback is, from a ride standpoint, my favorite ride at the park. I'd say maybe Flight of Fear, but we'll talk about that in another pod. So this week, so it was August of 2008, and then the ride opened with the park in 2009. So this was your first major ride announcement with Kings Island. Let's talk about that.
It was. I joined Kings Island's marketing team in 2007. Discussions were underway about what to do for 2009. There wasn't going to be a major new ride for 2008. It was still in that transition period, moving from Paramount to Cedar Fair. So for 2008, outside of twice the number of trash cans and changing some names of rides, there really wasn't anything new coming that year outside of a couple of live shows. But when the gates opened in April of 2008, guests immediately knew that something was going on because the Swan Lake area, which was beautiful, had been drained. There were bulldozers in the area. If you rode the train, you went around the bend before you went over the trestle, you saw that, some trees and things were being removed through there. So it wasn't a secret that something was going on. So pretty quickly, we started working on the teaser campaign, different ways to kind of get people talking about it. Everybody knew it was going to be something massive. Some thought it was going to be a big water ride. Thought maybe Kenton Cove's Keelboat Canal, something like that was coming back. Others thought it might be a coaster that, went under the midway, underwater. There had been some rumors about that kind of coaster back in the day and stuff coming. So there was a lot of speculation that was out there. Guest media, they all started going to the city of Mason trying to find blueprints, which was fun. And that was really the first time I knew that, that kind of thing, happened a lot because before I was on that side of the fence and was, a guest of the park, I never went and, dug around for things. I always waited for the park to announce something. I had fun with the teaser campaigns, but there wasn't, social media was just coming about. So you start to become more aware. Fan sites, KI Central was one of them where I started to look at that and all the speculation. Some people were getting a little closer. Then you had, the experts, Dennis Spiegel with International Theme Park Services. He'd been around when Kings Island first opened. Media was going to him, knocking on his door to see if he knew what was going on. When they got, wind of the blueprints and showed him that, he's looked at it and he goes, "Well, looks like a roller coaster to me." And then he says, "It could be this, it could be that." He named basically it could be any of these types of roller coasters out there, which just made it even better because then it went all over with what was happening. And then in park, maybe about 5 or 6 weeks or so before the announcement, which was uh, a lot of fun setting up for that. But on the fences and things through Rivertown, there were things like Ride, Sally Ride, Beware of Steep Inclines, and different things like that. Got people talking, but just a lot of fun. Now, Ryan, you were a pass holder at that time and very involved with KI
hmm
Central. What were you thinking from your end during this whole teaser campaign period?
So, obviously the plans leaked out. And we're saying leaked out, but it was public information. So, by the time of the announcement, I had a pretty good idea of the ride itself. But you'd be surprised how much you don't know. Because first of all, Diamondback, that blew me away. Nobody guessed Diamondback for the name. We'll get into the name Diamondback here in a second, but um, everyone thought it was Mustang. I know you had fun with it with the Ride Sally Ride, Mustang Sally stuff. Was Mustang ever on the table, or is that something we just made up?
Not at that time, really. We'll get to the name, as you said, a little bit later, but no, not really at that time. There was only, one name, which is what it is now, that was presented, and that's what it became. But it was fun, to see people going in different directions with it. They obviously thought from the teaser campaign there'd be something, Western themed, Rivertown
Mhm.
related. Um, but nobody guessed what it was going to be. But even with the coaster itself, I mean, you could see, on a blueprint, you can see layout and things, but you don't know if that's going to be a wing coaster, suspended coaster, hyper coaster, giga coaster. You don't really know until you get even closer to it and other plans are filed what it's going to
Right,
be.
and nobody's ever seen roller coaster plans without context and not been disappointed because I cannot tell you my earliest, exposure to early leaked, roller coaster blueprints were with Maverick, and all the Cedar Point people were like, "This is stupid. Why are they doing this?" And it turned out to be one of the best coasters on earth in many people's opinion. So with Diamondback, if you look at it from above, there's not much to it. So you look at it and you're like, This isn't steep, this isn't fast, this isn't high," but that's not the way the blueprints work, you know? So, but okay, let's move on. So the name Diamondback, you said that for pretty much that was pretty much the only one on the table. Tell us the story of how Diamondback became the name.
Well, when the park's general manager, Greg Scheid at the time, let the park uh, management team know that a new coaster was coming and it would be announced later that summer. So this is maybe back in, February, March, right before the gates open and everybody was going to know and start speculating. He asked everyone to keep it under wraps and that. And he says, "Oh, by the way, as the meeting's ending, he said it's going to need a name. So if anyone wants to, make any suggestions or whatever, just, drop me an email, and we'll take a look at it." Well, I'd already been thinking about it because I thought, you know, with what the layout and design was going to be, where it was going to be located, the ride was big, mean, aggressive, so I start thinking, you know, snake themed. What's a big, mean, aggressive snake? I start thinking Diamondback as a snake. I was a fan of the Arizona Diamondbacks baseball team. I thought they had a pretty cool logo, so I thought logo wise, I always go back to the beast being a logo that has withstood the test of time. I thought if with a snake, a name like Diamondback, a logo could be created that would make a name that and a logo that would be one of those things that 25, 30 years from now it still would be a popular selling item. So I put all those kind of things together and I you know put into my notes to Greg Scheid. When I emailed him, I just said, here's a name that I've been thinking of, and I said here's why, and I pointed all those things that I just mentioned as to why I thought that would be a good
Mhm.
name. About 10 minutes later, he walked down the hall and stuck his head in my office and he said Diamondback. And he goes, "I like that." He goes, "Let me run that one up the flagpole." So, he came back, I don't know, it was a day or two later, whatever, and, he said that the corporate team, liked that name and, so they started moving forward with that. You started seeing logo designs and everything off of that. And, that's how that came to be. So, you know, I didn't sign off on the name, but at least, I can always say I was the one that suggested that. So every time, that I would walk by the ride in Rivertown or something, I could look up at the name and logo and know that I had something to do with that, so a little bit of a legacy, type thing there with that. So that's kind of cool. But I just thought it fit, and the colors that it was going to be. And I just thought, that's a good name for it. And it worked.
Yeah, it absolutely did. So just to clarify one more time, Mustang is something we made up because it seems like pretty early on,
Oh, yeah.
Diamondback, like as soon as like the name started getting tossed around, that was pretty well accepted. Because
Well, Mustang was rumored for several different things. I mean, everyone thought maybe Diamondbacks would be Mustang. They thought maybe Mystic Timbers would be Mustang. Just from some of the different things that we could play with. I thought Mustang would have made for a great logo,
right, yeah, I agree. Because you could have done
as
a lot
well.
like
But
Maverick has with the wild horse and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and Diamondback,
and I don't know what other names were suggested because that was just you know the one-on-one I had with the parks general manager about that. I don't know who else submitted names or what the names
right.
were. Never asked the corporate team with planning and design what other names were out there. I just knew once that got into motion that I was pretty excited that something that I threw out there was going to be part of that, and hopeful that it would be like the beast. And when it was introduced and everyone saw the logo, that they'd be as excited about it as I was.
Yeah, absolutely. So, back to the actual announcement. So, April of 2008, you announced the ride. You stand on the Rivertown stage, which was ironically destroyed for Diamondback. Um,
Yes, it was.
so this was your first major announcement. What was going through your head? Were you like super excited? Were you nervous? Obviously, you ended up doing several of these in your tenure, but this was the first big one.
I wasn't nervous about it. I had seen enough new attraction announcements, new ride openings, those kind of things. During all my years as a pass holder and being involved, riding the race or not, I got invited to all those kind of things. So I've saw enough of them, and then went to other parks and got to see what they were doing in terms of these new announcements. So it wasn't anything to be nervous about. And I knew my, main part was just going to be making sure I got the name of the general manager correct when I introduced them. So there wasn't a lot on my plate that I had to do other than come back up and just kind of give out some of the stats. Well, by that time you have it memorized.
Right. Mhm.
It's in your head that, riders are going to snake their way around 5,282 feet of track at speeds up to, 80 miles an hour. So, it was all in my head. So it wasn't anything to be nervous about. What I was nervous about is, what if you throw a party and nobody comes? So this was one of those in-park announcements. So you start to think about that as, we're telling everybody it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm thinking about two things. I'm thinking, number one, I want the guests to all be in Rivertown so it looks impactful and there's a lot of, people there,
Mhm.
for dressing up that area and the stage and doing all that. But you're also thinking, is the media going to come out? Because that was the first real test that I had. Now they had seen, 2007 that I was able to get media out for Halloween Haunt and some other things that we were doing. And in 2008, early in the year, without having anything new, I was still pitching and getting stories on some of the existing attractions, the Racer, the Beast, the Grand Carousel, the KI Miami Valley Railroad. So in that respect, I was like, okay, I did it for those things, but for something that everyone's looking at and saying this is going to be the new signature attraction for next year, it had to, you had to have that pressure of getting the media out, and we had a great turnout for it. Um, and when we unveiled it, everybody was really excited about it. I think the highlight, though, of that announcement was the working model.
Yes. Yes.
It had three trains that operated, um, and I think that really helped sell what this ride was going to be. Because you could look at the renderings, you could look at the animation video with it, but I think having that working model, everybody was crowded around it. Right after the announcement, we moved it up to the front gate area by the International Restaurant in the windows
Mhm.
and had it running all day with three train. Again, three train operation. And so that was the star of the announcement, to be able to have that working model. And I think that really got everybody excited from that point on in August into the fall season. So every time they came to the park, you just saw a crowd of people looking in that window, watching that model operate.
Yeah. Okay. And then so moving along, construction starts in earnest after that. The trowel, as you mentioned, like the concrete base where the splashdown currently is, was already there. That
That
was
was there, and there was one piece of track sitting there.
yes. By the announcement, there was one piece of track sitting there, but I'm saying like beginning of the 2008 season, you already had the trowel and the
Oh
pond
yeah.
for the splashdown. Construction continues. I remember you and I ran Central at the time, KICentral.com for all of you who there's no way you don't know about it if you're listening to this podcast. But so you invited me up several times. Thank you once again to shoot pictures of the construction. The ride was topped off, and that was Thanksgiving week, I believe, of 2008. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, and it was
It
cold.
was so cold. It was me, and then it was you let somebody else come up that was in some sort of construction class in college, and he was filming it for some reason.
Hmm.
I remember it because I was still in college at the time, and I had like a marketing something or another final after that. So I had to be up there at the park at like 7 for that, and then that was at 2, and I just remember being so exhausted. But construction continues. We come up, take several photos. Mem Memorial Day. Media Day rolls around, day before opening day in 2009.
Well, let me stop real quick about construction. This is real interesting too. When I got
Mhm,
there, uh, I didn't have any equipment to work with.
mhm,
I had a little small digital, camera, just what they sold back at the time, but it wasn't high tech or anything like
yeah,
that. It was just one of those little small cameras, and I was taking didn't do video. I was taking pictures of the construction, sending it out to the media, and the media was picking it up. And as the ride got taller and taller, the images weren't going to be as sharp because it couldn't zoom in or
Mhm.
anything. I didn't have that kind of a camera to be able to do that. So I remember going to, um, the people that needed to sign off on an expense that, you look at all these hits and everything. If we wanted to continue, I kind of need a little bit better
I remember
camera,
you getting that. I
so I got.
remember because I had one that was not as advanced as yours, but I had had it for about a year, so I remember getting plenty of phone calls from you like, "I don't know how to zoom," or, like, just the basic stuff
Yeah,
because
I'd never taken pictures before, so I mean, I just, that wasn't what you did when you were a hockey media relations director. Your thing was writing game notes, wasn't
Yeah,
taking pictures or video or
absolutely.
anything. So
So
I didn't do that,
yeah.
but yeah, I think I became pretty competent with the camera once I got used to what to do with it and everything. But it was because of all the coverage that we were getting when I was sending out these pictures. Here we are, TV's video. You're thinking that, but they were using the pictures, and they would say an update from Diamondback today at Kings Island. They added this many more feet of track, or they topped it off, and um, so that was valuable to be able to get that camera and to be able to keep the ride out there top of mind. From the time we announced it all the way until it's opening. We're talking. You top it off, you have your initial test runs, and so by the time we were ready to open it, everybody had heard about that ride from the announcement date on August 6th until the opening date in April of 2009.
Absolutely. So let me back. So I was going to go into media day, but before that, I remember like you telling me that you bet somebody that you could get coverage, somebody to do a story on them planting grass because the Diamondbacks thing went
Yes,
so
I
well.
did. I did. I'm feeling pretty good, about the things we were able to do, and we had gotten to where the ride, was in that point to where it had been doing test cycles, and so it was what else you're going to do to keep it out there until we get to media day and opening day, and we're talking like 3 or 4 week period or something, but it's all just dirt and mud all around it, down by the splashdown and everything. So I said, I'll get somebody to come out. We're putting the grass seed and everything down next week, and I'm telling you, nobody's going to come out and cover a story about grass seed. Well, sure enough, there's a reporter, and the person I reported to at the time, the marketing director, they're at home watching TV, and they see a reporter holding in their hand grass seed, and they're like, the area around this all looks like this today, but by the time this ride opens in a couple weeks, it's going to look beautiful. One of those kind of stories. And after that, they no longer question whether or not I could get coverage on pretty much anything.
So that's when you got the extra lenses for the camera, the flash for the
Everything,
everything you wanted.
camera, yeah, anything I wanted. Like, okay, if you can get that.
All right. So
But yeah, but it was yeah, but they came out and they did a story about us planting grass seed and how beautiful it was going to look and how it just looked still like just mud, dirt, like a construction zone. And opening day was just around the corner, and how they're going to turn this around. So it was a story about that, just the grass seed we were planting and how quickly that was going to come together and how beautiful it would look when it opened.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's go on to media day. So one of the things I bet a lot of the people that are around now might be too young to remember media day, but some probably the memory is that it became almost protocol for like Ace members, enthusiasts to be invited to media day, but they weren't invited to Diamondbacks media day. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I struggled with that when that was told to me that this can't be it's not going to be a media event for all the coaster enthusiasts. I asked, why not? They're going to be upset. They're used to going to all these media day events. It's going to hurt us, when it comes time to vote for the golden ticket. But it turned out there was a valid reason for that, and we were doing a first rider auction for a kid again, and the thought was that if everybody could come to media day, they wouldn't bid to be one of the first riders. So they thought that would kind of hurt that first rider auction, and it probably would have
Hmm.
done that because we ended up raising over $100,000, which at the time was a record for the most money raised for a new ride opening. That was broken again by Banshee. A few years later, but yeah, to get over $100,000, I don't think that's there if it had been open to um, the coaster community at that time. So it was something that, yeah, it was disappointing, frustrating for the enthusiast group. I was disappointed for them that they couldn't be there because I knew how much that would mean to
Right.
them.
Yeah.
But it ended up being the right thing to do in terms of being able to raise money for the charity. And it was a charity, Kid
Mhm.
Again, that was still trying to, get themselves known in the market. So it worked out well.
I agree, and the cool part is you things evolve with time. So, with Banshee, you ended up having the best of both worlds. You invited the enthusiast groups, but the twist on it wasn't that you're not necessarily the first rider, but you get the first night rides. And with the
Yes.
first night rides, it was like there was food supplied. I remember the Banshee one was a great time. I was there for the
It was
first.
a 3-hour event at
Yeah,
night.
yeah, so you got to ride Banshee, and then, they had special remember they had, like, the Chicken Shack was new, so they served Chicken Shack food, so everyone got to try that, so that was a fun event, and I remember with the Diamondback one, when you hit about 25,000 in the first couple days, I was like, "You're gonna break 6 figures," and I don't think you believed me, but you did it.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, it was hard to tell because we were only looking at the time of, we were hoping to fill, each of the 3 trains.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about? 96 riders there. So we were hoping to be able to do that. And then there was a guy from Texas.
Yes.
He came in and um, everybody was bidding the minimum. At the time, I don't know what it was. $50,
Mhm.
whatever. And he comes in and just really, really jump started that for us because he put in a pretty high bid. Other people wanted to make sure that they got on the first train, so they started bidding, and then it became a competition, and then it just took off. So Alan Haig was the
I was
individual's
trying to
name.
remember his
So
name, I was thinking Austin Haig, but it's Alan Haig, yeah. I remember that,
Alan
yeah,
Haig,
he
yes, and
got,
great guy.
yeah, I never got to meet him, but I remember he was early in with, like, 2,500, so I imagine because he kept on
Yeah,
upping his bid, but then you had a pretty good idea with us because, we were encouraging people to bid, and it was kinda like there's a lot of because KI Central had been around for several years, but we were still trying to, like, make our mark in front of Cedar Fair, so we were the first, I believe, to say, "We're gonna raise money, but take that seat and give it to one of the kids from A Kid Again." So
and you
so
did,
we
yes.
took,
That was
KIC. I don't know what they're doing now, but at the time, we were cash flow positive, we made money. So we took all of our money for the entire summer, which wasn't a whole lot, but we took all that money, and then we took a couple donations from me, from Dane, and a couple of users and put it together and had about 800, $900,000 or so, and the kid that we sponsored, which we didn't pick, by the way, this isn't, this isn't the pound, it was just like, a couple kids got chosen, and then we sponsored one of them, but they got to sit in about the top 10 rows. I mean, I think they did them in order. But that was a really cool experience, being there for that first ride auction. Um, so we were able to sponsor them. But anyway, so media day comes, opens to the public. I remember me, you, I don't want to name drop anybody else, but your boss at the time, we're all up on the Eiffel Tower. I think Dane was with us too. And seeing
yeah.
that line, there are pictures out there on the internet. That line for
Yeah, I
Diamondback.
remember taking the pictures of
Oh,
that, which, like you said, are still on the internet. Um, yeah, wrapping around the almost the whole area around Rivertown, uh, you know, back around in front of Showplace. Uh, wasn't as long as you would think though, because of the capacity of the
right.
ride. So, you heard everybody saying 3 hours, 4 hours. It wasn't anything like that. But the pictures just looked real impressive.
Mhm.
I took the picture that I had taken. I submitted it to Associated Press, and it's in papers all over the country the next day or two, and um, so that got Diamondback off to a really good launch.
Yeah, I mean, as Bill Mefford would say, "What a sexy story." That's a term he likes to use when something is very marketable for to
What was it? It was the visual. I mean, you can
exactly.
have the best story idea that you want, but if you don't have the visual to support it, it doesn't go anywhere. But that picture from the tower of just the people lined up around just to get into that ride, and you're in the right spot with the tower and where Diamondback was for everybody to know that's exactly what they were waiting
Oh,
for.
yeah.
So it worked. But that was one of my favorite pictures that I took, while there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't do a self plug. The video that's in the gift shop, the really poorly edited video that was clearly done on free home software. That was me. That was done the night.
I get blamed for that.
I believe
But
it.
anyway,
But they would have changed it out, but they're probably spinning the same DVD that I gave them 15, well, probably 14 years ago at this point. But yeah, Diamondback still one of the best rides in the park. Tons of airtime, great night ride. My favorite part of the ride, by the way, is the second hill. Usually the first hill for a hyper is the
second hill.
best one. The second one, though, I really like it, especially during Halloween haunt season, because it feels like you go up to the top of the second hill and then you can't see the bottom because there's that layer of fog that happens more often than not. So very, very cool.
I got one other thing to
Yeah.
add about this. When the trains first came in for
Oh
Diamondback,
gosh, I know where you're going with this.
yeah, yeah, the trains come in and uh, operations, ask me if I want to, come check them out. Everyone's excited about it, rightfully so. So, we go over, we look at it, and they're asking me, go ahead, sit down, see what you think. So I sit down, and just out of habit from riding roller coasters my whole life, I pull the lap bar down, right?
Mhm.
Well, the lap bar doesn't go back up, so
Right.
I'm kind of stuck there.
Yeah, probably needed
Well, I
electric to
asked
raise.
operations is like, we haven't had any training. I don't know how to, they're sticking the nail in and trying to figure out how to do that. They get hold of maintenance. Maintenance comes over. We just got the trains. We don't know. I mean, nobody knew. So they're looking up the manuals and all that. And so I'm sitting there in this seat for a good 45 to 50 minutes before they figure out how to get me
Oh my
out.
gosh.
Um, so yeah, that was, and it was one of those photos that, someone took while I was sitting there, and then they decided to use that photo to help promote the first writers auction. They put it on the website, the
Yes.
homepage, and they said, "Don't just sit there. Drop a bid to be one of the first writers on Diamondback."
I remember getting a
I
text from you.
did not know they were going to do that, and I remember going down to them saying, "What is this?" And they were like, "Just roll with it. It's fun. It'll help raise
Yeah.
money. Think of it that way." But yeah, it was one of those most memorable things for me was just, being stuck in that seat while everybody was trying to figure it out. Because again, these trains had just arrived, had been put up in that storage area,
Mhm.
and no one had yet read the manuals or anything else about how you would manually release the lap bar once it locked. But you know, you just think you can do that because that's what you always do when you get in a ride. You just pull it down, you're checking it out, and I learned not to do that
Yeah,
anymore.
next time you sit in a brand new roller coaster car with no one's trained on, let's not pull the lap bar. I remember you texting me the picture saying, "The trains are here, lap bar works too," and you didn't tell me the
Yeah.
context for a few days.
Oh no, no, the lap bars work
Oh,
great.
yeah. Yep,
So
they've been working fantastic for the past 14 years.
yeah, don't just sit there, bid. I remember that. So that made it memorable too. I mean, there's all kinds of little fun stories like that that comes to mind when we talk about things like this. Diamondbacks, opening, or when we get to other rides and that'll be rekindled.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Well, Diamondback Hypercoaster at Kings Island, one of the best rides in the park, one of the best rides I've ever ridden. You can shoot me if you want, but that's my opinion. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.